Good morning. We are extremely pleased that you are here. And that we are here, it was not certain for a minute. You're ready to continue?
Yes.
You know what you're wanting?
Yes.
What is it?
Well, am I awake right now? Feels like a dream. I wanted to say that you've become my best friend over the last couple years, and truly grateful for you.
You can count on us.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I know that, for sure. You've been there when no one else was, so it's been great to have you there. And you've understood me when no one else understood me. So,
when you tune in to your inner being, there's a stability in your life that you should never look to other humans for. And so it isn't that they don't want to be there for you. It's that if they're not with their inner beings, they can't really be there for you. Sometimes if you can't reach your own inner being, you think, well, maybe I can reach a friend who has an inner being, who's tuned into their inner being. But if they're turned into their inner being and you're not, you can't find them either. So that's why when you say nobody's there for me, that's why, isn't it?
and it's actually been the biggest blessing that no one's been there for me, so that I could find you and find these teachings.
That's exactly right.
Thank you. I guess I was telling people if I ever got up here, I'd say this one thing. So I'm a chiropractor, brand new. So I'm very sensitive in all the realms, but I just joined a practice with my family, and I'm trying to keep my inner being with me while I work with them. And it's been the biggest challenge. And actually, I was headed west to start my own thing, and then kind of felt like I deterred up to back to home. And
it's interesting, isn't it? Because it feels like the path of least resistance to be at home, join the family in what they're doing, because there is some stability already carved out. So we understand why that feels like the path of least resistance. Family usually isn't even close to the path of least resistance, however, because it's hard to start new. You have so many buttons of each other that you push of each other. And so we want to just take just a little bit of time to talk about path of least resistance, because path of least resistance is something that you carve out new in the moment. It isn't something that you've been carving out over your lifetime. It's something that you carve out now. So it's a good thing when it feels clear to you, and it feels clear to you that this is the best path for now. And when it feels like that, it is. But now it's important for you to make it the best path by broadening that path of least resistance beyond just being about the stability of the family and the financial footing already underway. And now let it be about all other aspects too, which means that's going to be where your work is. You said that that's sometimes a sort of difficult thing to do. But if you start out every day in appreciation that you found your path of least resistance, and then you start with that focused attitude, and you look for more path of least resistance within what you're doing. And looking for the path of least resistance means looking for your inner being even though you're with your family. That's all the path of least resistance means, because the path to what? We can call it the path of least resistance or the path of most allowance, and it means the same thing, but it just means the path that's the easiest route to get to your inner being who's calling you and who is projecting thoughts towards you. So your inner being is carving out the path to you and for you. So it's more than half of it done, because your inner being is carving it out. Is this a helpful way of looking at this? So if you are now deciding that you're wanting to carve out your path of least resistance, now we like the way you started here, because you were talking about you found your path of least resistance to us or to your inner being, and sometimes couldn't find it to your friends. It felt like they weren't there for you. And you're accurate in the sense that they weren't tuned in, tapped in, turned on, so they weren't carving out the path of least resistance for you, and so that didn't feel like a viable path. Your inner being felt like a viable path, and now here you are in this wonderful practice with these wonderful people, with the path of least resistance already opened for you and opening for you, and now it's your work to continue to move towards your inner being, not towards your family. If you can be clear on what you said first thing to us on this first time that you visited with us, just keep saying that to yourself about where you stand. I'm going to continue to look to that vibrational path opening vibration, which always I can count on will be there. Think about wanting to carve a path with someone. Let's talk about it in physical terms. And you've got your tools to carve with, and others have their paths to carve with. There's a human team carving, and there's a non-physical team carving, but the human team isn't carving. They're nitpicking. They're not carving out the path, but your inner being is. Who are you glad is on your team? We're not wanting to cause any pushing against your family. We just want to activate within you in a way that you will always remember where your first attention must be to keep that path of least resistance wide open for the win-win of you and your family. You'll find clever ways of going about it. Not like, I'm not listening to you, I've got someone else. Nothing like that. You're not carving out the path, I can't count on you, you're nitpicking. Nothing like that. Just an inner knowing, I'm tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and I've got partners of a non-physical nature that are more than meeting me halfway on this trail, on this path of least resistance. And this is the bunch that I'm co-creating with. And thank you, family, for getting the juices flowing and for getting the momentum flowing and for making a place for me here. I like it here a lot. Good.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I guess the last thing I would say is, in this respect, how would I've never been efforting as much. So I guess I meditated every day for the last year just about, and it's changed my life. And I guess I'm efforting more now than I did before, and it probably has to do with the family aspect.
You think? That's something else about those two bunches. Your inner being is saying the path is carved, just flow with it. And the human, not always, but often, attitude towards you is you got to work hard. You got to do this and this and this and this and this. And we talked about it yesterday. Sometimes in their negative expectation, in their deciding, in their having already decided how it works, they want you to play the game the way they play the game. So let's talk about that in terms of what is the path of least resistance. So just play with us here. This will be very helpful. So is the path of least resistance to say to them, no, you're going about it wrong? That's the path of most resistance. Not only because you're going to activate them to get even more clear with you about what they think you should be doing, but you're pushing against them too. And so we want to be very clear. We're not saying choose this path, don't choose that path, because when you don't choose that path, you're not choosing that path either. Oh, isn't it tricky? You're not choosing your path of least resistance by saying I'm not going that way, because when you say I'm not going that way, guess which way you're going? That way. So before you even meet up with them, it's about carving out the path, which means anticipating who you're going to run into today over there and loving them before you get there, carving out that path. And if you carve out a path of ease and effectiveness and intuitiveness, because there is a skill you've learned and they've learned it too, but there's an intuitive thing that's happening in the moment that has to do with things you can't learn like that, that has to do with a sensitivity about what to do now, how to meet the energies of the client that you're interacting with. And that's something that is going to, in time, prove to be very effective. And they're going to come to understand and revere your different approach. But before they figure that out, you gotta love them anyway. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Enough?
Yes, thank you.
Really good. Really good.